Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MTG Foil. We've got the third guest deck today, and the bringer of the deck is Thijs. Welcome.
Thank you, thank you.
It's one of my favorite decks. It's the first Pioneer deck on this channel, so that's always awesome, finally. Huh?
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the deck.
So the deck is mono red, big red.
I was witness of you becoming the second place of the Dutch tournamentship Pioneer.
The Dutch Open Series.
The Dutch Open Series.
Yeah.
It was the last one this year before COVID breakout.
Yeah. Yeah, so I got to borrow the deck from Case, a foil deck of course.
Yep.
Yeah, and it played really well. The deck was a little bit incomplete with like 3 Remnant Runes instead of 4, things like that. But in the end I managed to get into the finale, losing to a good friend of mine and a former guest, Kim Hoemsma, in the finals. Yeah, it's a great deck, and today I'm going to show it.
Yeah, but for the record, you beat him later in another tournamentship.
Yeah, I got my revenge.
Spirit is a good matchup for Big Red. It is. Yeah. So, but you fell for an settled wreckage.
Yes, and I lost. Yeah, it happens.
Yeah. Well, I'm very excited about the deck. You've got very beautiful cards in it, better than the version that I gave you, because you've got full arts, some of them.
Yeah, I thought I played it foil and I couldn't play it unfoiled anymore when I bought the deck myself. So I thought,
cool.
Let's go for it.
I'm excited. Let's dive into it.
Let's do it.
Okay.
So today's deck guide is a Pioneer mono red deck. It's a big red deck because we play Thor Ragnarok. So the main thing this deck tries to do is kill your opponent as fast as possible. Soulscar Mage is a really fast 1-drop. Goblin Rebel Master just floods the board. Thor Ragnarok makes all your spells and creatures do even more damage than they already do. Wild Slash is great removal and gives you reach. The main strategy with this deck is to hit hard, fast. So in this deck we play 24 lands, of which 17 basic mountains. We can afford to add lands like Castle Emerald. So Castle Emerald enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a mountain. It adds 1 red, or you could choose to pay 3 and tap it to give creatures you control +1 +0 until of turn. We play 2 in this deck. Another utility land is Mutavault. Mutavault is taps for colorless, and for 1 mana you can activate it. It becomes a 2/2 creature with all creature types until end of turn. It's great against control decks who really have a hard time to deal with this kind of effect. The last utility land is one we play 4 of. It's Remnant Ruins. So Remnant Ruins taps for 1 colorless mana, or you could pay 1 life and add a red mana to your mana pool. For 4 mana you can tap it and sacrifice a desert. Remnant Ruins deals 2 damage to each opponent. So that this basically gives you extra reach. Sometimes you just win because you have this land. So we play 4 of these in the deck. So the curve of this deck begins at the 1-drops. We play 8 creatures with converted mana cost 1. These are 4 Monastery Swiftspears. Monastery Swiftspear is a 1 mana 1/2 creature with haste and prowess. Prowess says that whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. The other 1-drop is Soulscar Mage, which also has prowess. It's also 1/2. However, it doesn't have haste, but it has another very powerful ability. It says, if a source you control would deal non-combat damage to a creature an opponent controls, put that many -1/-1 counters on that creature instead. This means that you can deal with indestructible creatures, for example. So at the 2-drop slot of the deck we play 3 times Karizev Skyship Raider. Karizev is a 1/3 legendary creature with first strike and menace. Whenever Karizev Skyship Raider attacks, create a legendary 2/1 red monkey creature token named Ragavan that's tapped and attacking. Exile the token at the end of combat. Another creature we play in this deck is Bone Crusher Giant. We play this card 4 times in the deck as well. It's a very good card because it has basically 2 modes. You can pay 2 mana for Stomp, which is an instant. It means that Bone Crusher Giant is going on an adventure. Damage can't be prevented this turn. Stomp deals 2 damage to any target. So this can trigger prowess from the Soulscar Mages and the Monastery Swiftspears. The creature side is also great. For 3 mana you can play it as a 4/3 creature. Whenever Bone Crusher Giant becomes a target of a spell, Bone Crusher Giant deals 2 damage to the spell's controller, so it's a little annoying to deal with. Get through the necessary damage to kill off your opponent. We also play Goblin Chainwhirler 4 times in this deck. So Goblin Chainwhirler is a 3 mana 3/3 first strike Goblin Warrior. When Goblin Chainwhirler enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each opponent and each creature and planeswalker they control. This card is very dependent on the meta. If there are a lot of 1-drops, 1/1s like Llanowar Elves, this card can be very great. It's also very good with Soulscar Mage, because Soulscar Mage says if a source you control will deal non-combat damage to a creature an opponent controls, put that many -1/-1 counts on that creature instead. So basically what happens is, if Soulscar Mage is on the battlefield and you play this, the creatures of an opponent get -1/-1 counters. Another goblin we play in this deck is the Goblin Rebel Master. It's a 3 mana 2/2 Goblin Warrior. It says other goblin creatures you control attack each turn if able. It also reads at the beginning of combat on your turn, put a 1/1 red goblin creature token with haste onto the battlefield. And they can attack. Whenever Goblin Rebel Master attacks, it gets +1/+0 until end of turn for each other attacking goblin. So this is a great ability if an opponent has no blockers, for example, you can deal a lot of damage. One of my favorite cards in the deck is Thor Thane of Redfell. It is a 4 mana 2/4 Dwarf Noble. It says if a red source you control would deal damage to an opponent or permanent an opponent controls, it deals that much damage +2 instead. This card is great with Karizev because when Karizev attacks, it attacks with 2 bodies, which it means that she can alone deal 7 damage if Thorbrand is on the battlefield. It's also a great card with the Goblin tokens you make with Rebel Master and with Bonecrusher Stomp, which deals 4 damage instead of 2. And also it wipes the board with Goblin Chainwhirler. It deals 3 damage to the opponent and to all the creatures they control. If you have Soulscar Mage, they get 3 -1/-1 counters. So yeah, fun card. Another powerhouse card in the deck is Chandra, Torch of Defiance. Depending on the meta, you can add more or you can cut her from the deck or put her in the sideboard. But she's really great against control, for example. She's a 4 mana planeswalker with 4 loyalty. Her +1 reach, you can exile the top card of your library, you may cast that card. If you don't, Chandra, Torch of Defiance deals 2 damage to each opponent. You can also +1 her to add 2 mana to your mana pool. So you can cast, for example, a blocker with that mana if you want to untap with your Chandra on the battlefield the next turn. Her -3 protects herself as well. Chandra, Torch of Defiance deals 4 damage to target creature. And her ultimate is insane if you get there. If you get there, you probably win the game. -7 reach, you get an emblem with whenever you cast a spell, this emblem deals 5 damage to target creature or player. Another fun card in deck is Embercleave. It's a 6 mana legendary artifact equipment with flash. The spell costs 1 less to cast for each attacking creature you control. When Embercleave enters the battlefield, you may attach it to a creature you control. And the equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has double strike and trample. This is, for example, really strong with the Goblin Rebel Master in the deck, because Goblin Rebel Master is becoming huge if you have a lot of goblins, and with Embercleave you deal a lot of damage. It probably won't die because the first strike damage will save it. Also, it triggers the prowess from the Soulscar Mages and the Monastery Swift Spear. Also goes wild with Thorbrand, for example. Yeah, if people don't expect it, you can play it. If people expect it, you can play it as well. So there are 8 cards left in the deck. These are the removal spells. So we play 4 Wild Slashes in the deck. Wild Slash is the Lightning Bolt of Pioneer. It's a 1 mana instant. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, damage can be prevented this turn. And Wild Slash deals 2 damage to target creature or player. So it's basically a little bit better than Shock. Because Prowess, for example, it's a little cheaper than Stomp. And the last card we play in this deck is our 4 Lightning Strikes, which are 2 mana instant, and it deals 3 damage to any target. It also triggers Prowess, and it's another great removal spell, and it's also great because it can give you the additional reach you need to finish off a player. Now we're going to take a look at the sideboard. So what makes this deck really great is that there are a lot of good red sideboard cards. At 1 mana Chandra's Defeat, we play 2 of this card in the deck. It's a 1 mana instant that deals 5 damage to target red creature or red planeswalker. If that permanent is a Chandra planeswalker, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. The last part is basically flavor text, but it's really good in the mirror, this card. Against the Spirits deck we have Rending Volley, which is a 1 mana instant that can't be countered by spells or abilities. So it deals 4 damage to target white or blue creature. One of the most famous sideboard cards in red is Abrade, the 2 mana instant that lets you choose one of the next 2 options. As Abrade deals 3 damage to target creature, or you could destroy target artifact. I played 2 of this card in the sideboard as well. Another removal spell in the sideboard is Lava Coil. I played this card 1 time in the sideboard. It's a 2 mana sorcery that deals 4 damage to target creature. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. It's a great card because sometimes 3 damage just isn't enough to kill a creature you want to get rid of. So the 4 damage is very relevant, and also another relevant thing of this card is that it exiles the creature. This makes it very useful against, for example, graveyard decks. Another card that makes the sideboard of this deck very good is Eidolon of the Great Raffle. Before the combo bans in Pioneer, this card was needed main board because it was so good against the Lotus Bloom deck. Because it was very good against the Storm kind of decks, which play a lot of spells and they just can't do it. They just can't afford to play a lot of spells when this creature sticks on the battlefield. So in order to prevent an opponent from gaining life, I play 2 Rampaging Ferocidon in the deck. This is a 3 mana 3/3 dinosaur creature with menace. It says players can't gain life, and whenever another creature enters the battlefield, Rampaging Ferocidon deals 1 damage to that creature's controller, which you have to pay attention on with your Rebel Masters if you play this card, because a Rebel Master will do a lot of damage to you as well when this card sticks. One of my favorite additions to the deck is Perforos, God of the Forge. You don't normally see this card in this deck. I think it's good if you play against the control deck like Sultai Control, which can be really tough matchups. They have a hard time dealing with it because it's a 4 mana indestructible legendary enchantment creature. As long as your devotion to red is less than 5, Perforos isn't a creature, so it makes it even harder to deal with. So when you have, for example, a Goblin Chain Whirl on the battlefield and an Eidolon of the Great Raffle, and you play this, the devotion makes this card a 6/5 creature with indestructible, which is really strong as well. Makes it a little bit easier to deal with because creature exile, creature bouncing is a thing. What makes this card very good in my opinion is that it says whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Perforos deals 2 damage to each opponent, which can be 4 damage if you have a Torbran entering the battlefield or being on the battlefield. This is very nice with Kariza, for example, because every turn if you attack with her you get a Ragavan token which enters the battlefield, which deals 2 damage to your opponent, or the Rebel Master tokens all deal 2 damage. So this card can kill quite fast. However, it's only good in the grindy matchups because they have no clock and they can't get rid of it. The last card in the sideboard is a 1/of Chandra, Torch of Divines. Again, yeah, also great against control matchups and grindier matchups.